North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings, my name is John David Wells. What do? We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We make commentary, which is not news, it's just my opinion. And we debate the opinion, the analysis, the news. The Wells Report, news, analysis, commentary, and debate, much imitated, never duplicated, and we thank you very much for being with us here on the Wells Report at our normal time, 2 to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, on most of this same internet platform on which you are watching. We're working to get back on the radio, hopefully here in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, and around the state of Texas, and who knows, might be coming to a radio station near you in Akron, Ohio. Because I found out yesterday I have friends at North Coast Environmental Filtration just outside of Akron. And apparently there are like 200 people there. God bless you guys. Thanks very much for listening. Found out that from Errol yesterday. And it's amazing. It's amazing what happens. It's always been something that has just amazed me. You know, I do this show focused on the star of the broadcast, which, by the way, is news. It's not me. And I do the news, and I hope that people get some value out of it. And it always surprises me when somebody comes up and says, yeah, we do. And so it means a lot to me. Thank you. For those people in Akron, Ohio, you're looking down at us at Texas and saying, when does winter come to Texas? Well, if you ask us, winter has come to Texas with a vengeance. Almost 300,000 homes and businesses across the Lone Star State are without power today, and more than 2,200 flights have been canceled amid unrelenting blast of treacherous, icy conditions and brutal cold that has left at least 6 dead. That is horrifying. 2 years ago, we lost 500 Texans in something like this because ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, decided that for whatever reasons they had, I think it was for chasing personal bonuses, that they would not generate enough electricity for one of the coldest snaps in history in Texas. And 500 of us died. It's a tragedy when anyone does, but I am so sorry that 6 have lost their lives because of this storm. The winter weather system, now in its 3rd day, swept from Minnesota deep into the heart of Texas. Wrecks on slippery roads have been reported in Texas, Arkansas, and other states. We really cannot emphasize this enough. Do not be on the roads. The National Weather Service office in Fort Worth, Texas, told all of us today. They're going to be virtually impossible throughout today and tonight. Power outages could last 12 to 24 hours in the state capital, that's Austin, as ice brought down power lines and tree limbs, according to Austin Energy. The city's community-owned electric utility said its crews were facing icy roads and frozen equipment, making it difficult to provide an estimate for restoration times. Part of Texas were colder than Alaska. AccuWeather reported a real field temperature of 28 degrees in Dallas this morning, 3 degrees warmer than Anchorage, Alaska. What do you know? Let's see other weather developments in Memphis. Services for Tyree Nichols, who died after being police officers during a traffic stop last month, were delayed more than 2 hours because of weather and travel delays. Winter storm warning also in effect for east, central, southeast, and southern Oklahoma. We have friends in Oklahoma in those very areas. They are the Oklahoma Department of Transportation also listening today, hopefully if they're at work. I don't know whether they are or not. Hopefully, Kelly Lyons will be checking in with us a little bit later on and let us know. LaGuardia Airport in New York experienced a ground stop for the 2nd morning in a row because of wintry conditions. Later reported average delays of more than 40 minutes. You think it's bad here on Minnesota's annual Winter Walk and Winter Walk to School Day. Residents of some areas of northern Minnesota woke up to temperatures as low as minus 25 degrees. Blah. This, according to the, oh man, I can't imagine. The National Weather Service office in Duluth, Minnesota said light winds meant 35 below in some areas where a wind chill advisory was in effect. You know, it's not bad out there. Let me see what our current temperature is right now. When I woke up this morning, it was around 25 degrees. Now it's all the way up to 30. That was our expected high today. So we're at about 30 degrees, and it's really not bad. It's not bad if you just sit out there and you're out of the wind or the wind doesn't move. If the air moves, it will cut right through you. Let's see, getting back to the winter walk, the events encourage everybody to travel by foot for at least 15 minutes. Don't let the cold scare you off, said the transportation secretary on the website. It adds to the celebrations and can start small or include an entire school. After all, this is Minnesota, the land of ice fishing, hockey, cross-country skiing, fat biking. Fat biking. Does anybody know what fat biking is? Anybody have any idea? What is fat biking? And sledding. Who would not want to fight? Who would not want to throw a walk and bike to school day in the middle of winter? Yeah, don't hibernate, participate. I think this is making light out of a really bad situation. By the way, more than 1,200 flights into and out of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, 3/4 of the number scheduled were canceled before noon today. The airport tweeted that all traveling to DFW Airport should consider road conditions and allow extra time to travel to the airport. Please approach entry and departure gate plazas with extra caution. Yeah, because they're made out of concrete. They are not going to move. You have to allow 2 or 3 times the amount of stopping distance, depending on how fast you're going. You know, if you're like going, say, 30 miles an hour, it's usually about 35 feet that you can stop in. Well, now it's 70 or maybe 75, 80 feet. Stay away from cars. I was talking about driving, and I forgot to tell you about driving in the box. And especially when it's cold like this, what you want to do is you do not want to be side by side with a car on either side of you. You don't want to have a car side by side. What you want is you want to be able to go at least one lane either direction at any given time. I can't tell you how much this has saved me. You know, I just don't allow people to drive side by side with me on the freeways. I just don't. I don't allow myself to get boxed in with a truck. I always have a place to go. And you should keep that rule in mind, especially when it's icy like this. Especially when it's icy like this. So an ice storm is continuing in effect until tomorrow morning in north and central Texas. Mostly freezing rain and sleet expected. The National Weather Service Fort Worth warned. The Weather Service warned that significant icing is expected throughout the day and more accumulated garbage into the night. Okay, so that is basically where we stand at this particular moment. It is very, very cold out there. Where are you? Where are you and what's going on in your neighborhood? Okay, would like to know. Let's see, Oklahoma can probably drive in this weather. I don't know. I used to live in Oklahoma when it was like this, and I can tell you that the driving up there is not much different than the driving down here. That's just the way it is. Let's see. We also have a YouTube update. YouTube, about a week ago, suspended us for about a week. I was kind of expecting them to lift the suspension. I don't know why they haven't. Now, that doesn't mean that the 208 people that have subscribed to the Wells Report on Facebook, on YouTube, can't see it. They can, they just can't interact with it. Okay. And I don't know why that's still the case. I'm going to have to find some way of communicating with these people. I certainly hope they would at least tell me just exactly how long a Google or YouTube week is, because most weeks are 7 days. Well, I just looked at the calendar, and it's been 7 days. So I'm wondering what's happening there. Okay, let's see. Wondering if the transportation secretary walked to work. Yeah, in Oklahoma, I don't know. Okay, so Yvonne Field said fat bikes are the solution since their tires are typically at least 3.8 inches wide and made with traction more in line with snow tires on your Subaru than normal bike tires. Fat bikes are made to be ridden in snow, downhill, across varying types of terrain. Okay? Buddy's in pain right now. Buddy is saying, hey, wait a minute. I have got to get to the store. I need chocolate chips. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. All right. Let's see. No, the story you just read. What? What are you talking about, LM Valiant? What are you talking about? Okay. So fat bikes look like somebody stole the wheels off their motocross setup and implanted them onto their bicycles. Okay, so there you go. Fat bikes. Now we know. Now we know. I don't I have decided not to ride bikes. Actually, I didn't decide it. My wife decided that I wasn't riding bikes anymore. I've got to figure out how to get around that one of these days. So, what did we do today that was really, really cool? We made oatmeal. Yeah. We had oaty mealy. Yeah. And let me tell you something. When you're cold, you got that bone chill going. Oaty mealy is good. That's our name for oatmeal. We have oaty mealy and creamy wheaty. And so what we do is Susan likes to have blueberries in hers. Yeah, I just like butter and sugar. That's all I do. I add blueberries to Susan's, and she really likes it. Oatmeal did, man, it hit the spot. It hit the spot. Over the weekend, Susan made some really cool tomato soup that she makes. It's almost like tomato bisque. Oh yeah. Yvonne says oatmeal with butter and brown sugar. Yes. Yummy. Um, yeah, so that's what we do with that. And that was so good that even Colton decided to come down and have some. So we were able to warm ourselves because as you know, oatmeal will stick to your ribs forever. And so that's what's going on with that. So I hope you are staying warm. I hope you're finding a way to be cozy. One of the things that I'm very, very thankful for in this cold snap is the fact that I didn't need to run the generator. Yeah, I didn't need to run the generator. I was looking at that and saying, boy, is this going to be the time? And so I was ready to do it. But fortunately, I didn't have to. So no generation of my own power. But I will tell you, it's essential. It's absolutely essential that you have a way to power your house when the people who are supposed to do it for a living just can't make it happen. And that is just the way it is. I bought this very, very cool generator, and I was thinking ahead. I said, I want a generator, and I want one that I can hook another generator of the same type up to, so I can have two generators running, so I can have uninterruptible power. And if my neighbors need some help, I can help them. And because I tell you what, you go through one of those screw ups like we did 2 years ago without enough power, and it will change your life. You will completely reevaluate all the things that you've been told about power, and it'll also create an opportunity for you to have an eye narrowing conversation with your HOA. No, I will have a generator. I'll have one. Yeah, it will be a little noisier than my normal power supply. Yeah, but I'm not going to say no on this because I'm not going to die because somebody made a mistake at ERCOT, and I'm not going to get garbaged by my HOA for running a generator. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us. It's Wednesday. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. You can join us on our chat room at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Actually, you can't find it on YouTube right now because it's still being canceled, because I don't understand why. Because you can watch the show on YouTube. Approximately 208 people are doing that every day. But you can't interact with the show on the chat room. I'm hoping that's going to change. It would be nice. So if you are watching on YouTube, if you'd like to interact with the show, give us a call at the following number to 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Or you can go to facebook.com/The Wells Report. John David Wells, all one word. There is no H in John. JONDAVIDWELLS. Okay. So you can find us on the chat room there. A lot of people have made that move. Or you can go to twitch.tv, and I think it's /The Wells Report net. Is that right, LM Variant? Is it the Wells Report net over there at Twitch TV? You can go to twitch.tv, do a search for the Wells Report. We'll pop right up. Also, by the way, we are on Twitter. You can find us on Twitter, and I think you can interact with Twitter on the chat room. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe I should find out. We should do that little experiment there. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. Let's see whether or not, first of all, whether we can find the Wells Report. So there's Twitter on my fin. All right, and then I'm going to go to the home button. Then I'm going to go to the search button. Then I'm going to go to the Wells Report. The Wells Report, John David Wells at the Wells Report. And I'm going to hit it live. I'm wearing the correct shirt. So there you go. Okay. Let me, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off, because I wear my headsets under my headphones. That way somebody can talk to me without you hearing it. Yeah. So let me see what I got here. Let's go. All right. Okay. All right. For some reason it stopped. Let me see. We're trying to figure out how this all works. Okay. So let's see here. Hold on. Let me just turn that off, and then let me turn this back on again. Yeah. Let's go. See? That's the show that we're just listening to. All right. Now all I have to do is I got to find out whether or not. Let's see. I can probably hit the mute button if I can just find the mute button. Okay, I can't find the mute button, so I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to go testing. I should have done this a long time ago, but I never had a reason to do it, because I never had any problem with YouTube before. You know, I just never had any problem with it. Testing, ... And I'm going to do that. Okay. Let's see if it pops up. Let's see. The live chat being disabled makes me wonder if the ban had something to do with some comments made. YouTube should at least let you know why the chat was disabled, said Chris Grimes. I agree. Okay. And so far I've sent a chat to myself on Twitter, and I haven't seen it yet. So I don't know whether that goes anywhere or not. Maybe it's just to the people watching it on Twitter. I don't know. But anyway, so we are back. If you are on YouTube, thanks very much for hanging with us as we sit out this suspension. Like I said, I'm really hoping that at some point, yeah. By the way, if you go to Twitch TV, you're looking for the WellsReportNet.com, or actually just the Wells Report Net. Okay, just add the word net to the Wells Report, and you will be immediately teleported to Twitter. All right, no, Twitch rather. So Facebook, YouTube, kind of sort of wounded, but still working. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. And later on today, we'll have Rumble, and we'll also have Patreon. I'm going to see what I can do about doing a live broadcast on Rumble. Just give me a chance to figure that out. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary and we debate. There is economic news today. The Federal Reserve Bank went ahead and made another raise to a key interest rate today. And they did so with a raise that was far smaller than the ones that we've been seeing. The Fed, as expected, raised its key short-term interest rate by a 0.25 percentage point today, 25 basis points. That throttled back from a half point raise in December, acknowledging that a historic inflation spike is now slowing. Inflation has eased somewhat, but remains elevated. Yeah, I was doing some research for a Twitter post that I made yesterday, and the 2022 average inflation rate was 8.003%. Whoa. I mean, it was like, seriously? Whoa. Anyway, so it's still very, very high. But the central bank appears reluctant to signal that the aggressive campaign to beat back price increases is nearing its end as it begins to balance the benefits of the initiative with growing recession risks. So what's happening is that you essentially weaken the economy in order to bring prices down. It's kind of a ham-fisted approach. It can have a very serious move. Now American corporations are out front of all of this. In other words, when the Fed makes a move in the economy, it takes about 18 months for it to actually be in effect. But businesses move faster. So there's a synergistic effect. There are, say, for example, industries that depend on short-term loans to be able to keep their innovation, their R&D, research and development, so on and so forth going. And they stop doing that. Well, then they don't need the R&D people. And they don't need the people who are in the labor pool to be able to construct what the R&D people come up with. That's why you keep seeing these absolute layoffs of people happening right this very minute. So what happens is that the Fed will do something and the economy will start to react to it very slowly. But business reacts faster because the government runs at the speed of paper. Industry runs at the speed of computing. So they make all their decisions. The industries, the corporations, they make all their decisions. They use their AI, they use their algorithmic prediction software, and they say, okay, we got to lose 10,000 people. And so they make those cuts right now. And that's what's happening, which is going to deepen the recession effect. And so that's why this particular raise in the short-term interest rate was only a 0.25 point. Because they are very concerned about these decisions made by corporations actually, and other companies too. It's not just corporations, but other companies just essentially laying off people for a rainy day that hasn't actually showed up yet. In a statement after the meeting, the Fed repeated the ongoing rate increases will be appropriate to bring down yearly inflation to the Fed's 2% goal. Some economists expect the Fed instead to say additional increases would be needed, hinting that the Fed is close to winding down this cycle of interest rate hikes. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the latest move of the federal funds rate should be somewhere between 4.5 to 4.75. That's up from near zero in March, in its boldest flurry of rate increases since the 1980s. The hike is expected to further slow down economic activity as it drives up rates for credit cards, adjustable rate mortgages, other loans, but Americans, especially seniors, are finally reaping higher bank savings yields after years of meager or non-existent returns. Yeah, okay, that's sort of nice, I guess. So the smaller rate hike actually happened this week, but what does it mean? I mean, what does it actually mean? The slower pace is intended to give the economy a chance to digest the Fed's earlier string of aggressive rate hikes. Credit card rates are still at record highs, while mortgage rates have eased lately. They are still at the highest level in more than a decade. A bank rate survey said last month that 25% of Americans faced with a $1,000 emergency would use a credit card and pay it off over time. That was the highest share since Bankrate began polling that data. Even though economists are split on whether the Fed will pause interest rate hikes after this week, the central bank's projections released in December show there's more to come. In its 2023 median funds forecast, the median Fed funds forecast was 5.1% above the current Fed funds rate, with inflation easing to 6.5% in December, but still more than triple the Fed's 2% goal. Some economists believe the Fed will need to keep raising rates to slow down the economy and cool inflation even further. Although the Fed doesn't directly control consumer interest rates, its rate increases ripple throughout the economy and ultimately slow demand and inflation. Now, there's a guy who was very unhappy about this. He's very unhappy with this strategy of raising interest rates, the Fed raising interest rates, and essentially creating recessionary conditions for the economy. Let's see, interest rate hikes. He said it was a bankrupt strategy from 10 years ago. And the guy's name is Steve Forbes. Steve Forbes spent a lot of time on this broadcast. He changed his phone number and so on. The Federal Reserve's mission to keep the U.S. economy humming, not too hot, not too cold, but just right. When the economy booms and runs hot, distortions like inflation and asset bubbles can get out of hand, threatening economic stability. That's when the Fed steps in, raises interest rates, which helps cool down the economy and keep growth on track. Job number one for the Fed is managing monetary policy for the United States, which means controlling the supply of money in the country's economy. While the Fed has multiple tools at its disposal for that task, its ability to influence interest rates is the most prominent and effective monetary policy tool. When they want to take money out of the economy, they raise interest rates. And that way the banks collect more money because their interest rates are higher. When there's not enough money in and money's tight and so on and so forth, they loosen it up by lowering interest rates. When that money's available, things like the stock market really take off. When people talk about the Fed raising interest rates, they're referring to the federal funds rate, also called the federal funds target rate. The Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, sets a target range for federal funds rates, which act as a reference for the interest rates big commercial banks will charge each other for overnight loans. Banks borrow overnight loans to satisfy liquidity requirements by the regulators, including the Fed. The average of the rates banks negotiate for overnight loans is called the effective federal funds rate. This in turn impacts other market rates like the prime rate and the SOFR, which I have no idea what it is, the secured overnight financing rate. Now we know. Anyway, Steve Forbes says that this kind of stuff, this idea that what you need to do is you need to raise interest rates. They say that he says that that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is get control of government spending. The right thing to do is to create productivity. And I can see his point. The only problem with that is that you can replace artificial inflation, which is what we have right now because of political decision making in Washington, D.C. That happened a couple of years ago. So what happens is you can create this artificial inflation. The other way you can do it is by allowing the economy to go too fast. In other words, prosperity, happy days are here again. Everybody's wandering around. There's big parades, blah, 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 blah. And this has a serious effect on everything, not just the United States. But in the world monetary system, the dollar becomes so expensive, nobody can really deal with it. Now, that's good for us because we get very cheap vacations. But the thing about that is that that's still not something that you can do for very long. You quite literally overwhelm the world monetary process, and that's a problem. Let's see. Chris Grimes, the International Monetary Fund, said on Monday it expected the global economy to slow this year as central banks continued to raise interest rates to tame inflation. But it also suggested the output would be more resilient than previously anticipated, that a global recession would probably be avoided. So let me talk to you a little bit about the 2008. What did they call that? They called it something. It was a pretty serious recession. It happened over the derivative scandal running through the marketplace, where these subprime house mortgage loans became parts of these derivative portfolios where they would take, say, for example, a whole bunch of mortgages and they'd package them all together and they'd sell them as a product. And some of those mortgages were subprime. And RNB Paribas, the bank, the Central Bank of France, said, no, we're not buying. And that stopped. That stopped way too much. These derivatives were handy. They were popular. They were all over everywhere. Well, what ended up happening was it dang near crashed the economy of the entire world. RNB Paribas says, no, we're not doing it. Deutsche Bank said, no, we're not doing it. Sumitomo Bank said, we're not doing it. And it went around the world at the speed of poverty. And what ended up happening was that the Fed essentially said, we're going to cover all your losses. If there are any problems with these derivatives, we will cover your losses. Chris Grimes, the Great Recession in 2008. And that's exactly what they did. And what they did was guarantee all the losses for all the banks. So suddenly banks around the world had to decide whether or not the United States was actually going to make good on their financial promises. And they said, okay, we believe in the United States. And everything started back up again and so on. But there was money that changed hands. Huge amounts of it, in fact. And the Fed had to gather that money back up. What we have seen the government put into the economy was a particle of the money laid out by the Fed in 2008, in the Great Recession. I mean, it was just a particle, just a little bitty bit of the money that, and you're sitting there going, John, it was $1.7 trillion. It was $1.9 trillion. Yes, I know. But in comparison to floating the entire world economy for about 6 months, it was really inexpensive. But the Fed had to get that money back. And the fancy banking that the Fed did to preempt a worldwide economic disaster was historic. I maintain that the greatest achievement of human beings is the way we create and spend money. Money, a medium of exchange, a way to keep score of wealth, is a brilliant, especially now in the way we do things. It is a brilliant construct of human intelligentsia. It's just amazing. And one of the interesting things about that is that these rules for this money are absolutely not just well thought out, but also well executed. And they are so well executed, they're so well thought out, that the only thing that can screw things up is what you have to have a thriving monetary system in the first place. And that's free market economy. Because the free market economy is what drives all of this thinking. You cannot just create a stagnant, unmoving economy that has X amount for this and X amount for that and X and so on and so forth. You can't. Because there are always things that will cause it to move. So if you allow people to have that freedom, that liberty, that capability, the ability to risk their capital on a venture and then receive huge rewards because they did so, then what can happen is that you can have the incidental strength to handle the curveballs like COVID-19 or a tsunami that wipes out the financial district of Japan or any number of other things. It's truly brilliant the way we handle money, not just in the United States, but around the world. And so when you start thinking about all this, when you start thinking about what's going on, just understand that if indeed the Fed does its job, and they blew it the first time, you remember I told you that the Fed takes responsibility for the Great Depression? Yeah. They have learned since then, and they do an amazing job. Let's hope they're able to do it again. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us today. It's Wednesday, where the work week is flying by, already halfway through. We're going to be back coming up in just a couple of seconds. We're going to be talking about AP African American Studies. Stay put. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. A while back, we were talking about Ron DeSantis, who had a beef with the College Board and an advanced placement African American Studies class. He said that he was not going to allow it to be taught in Florida schools, and essentially told the College Board to change their course. And the College Board did exactly that. Here's an update. The head of the College Board defended the new advanced placement course on African American Studies weeks after Florida said it was going to ban the class. The College Board today released its official and revised framework for the course, and CEO David Coleman told USA Today that, quote, At the College Board, we don't really look at the statements of political leaders. No, we look to the record of history, unquote. Well, David, that is not what the course was doing, and that's why you got in trouble with it. Nice statement, but not necessarily always the case. What you should have said was, at the College Board, we really don't look to the statements of politicians and their political leadership unless they catch us red-handed. So that's what they probably should have said. On January 24th, the spokesperson for Republican Governor Ron DeSantis claimed that the College Board will be revising the course for the entire nation due to the governor's principled stand for education over identity politics. It appears as though it does indeed point to a successful outcome. The new framework does address many of the concerns Florida raised, and those topics are not included, or they're included only as optional project topics. But Coleman was firm that the changes to the frameworks had been in the works for a year. Yeah, the framework. Oh, we've been working on that forever. Yeah, we already had. No, that's not true. The course, which is 10 years in the making, is already being taught in 60 high schools. Next school year, it will be taught at approximately 500 high schools nationwide before being offered at any school interested in providing the course. It emerges at the same time as a racial reckoning in the United States and the debate over the teaching of critical race theory, which was essentially a college-level concept based on paranoid racial delirium regarding systemic racism in the United States. You really didn't have to work that hard. You didn't have to get into the fact that white people oppressed black people were victims, and we need to teach them to be victims. And we need to teach that the oppressors are oppressors. We need to teach the victims to hate the oppressors, and the oppressors to think that the victims are subhuman. That's essentially what CRT is, and it's absolutely intellectually bankrupt, divisive, nasty, horrifying, and terrible. I don't know what the guy. I had the guy's name, but as soon as I and a lot of other people reported the actual origin of critical race theory, suddenly you couldn't find his name anymore. It's the craziest thing. Anyway, it has changed. This course, this AP course, we hope that everyone will give the course a fresh look, a fresh read, because we think people will be impressed with what they see there. So what's in the course now that wasn't there before, you may ask? The origins of the African diaspora. In other words, the dispersal of Africans from Africa all around the world in the prospect of slavery in their future. That unit includes information on early African empires and kingdoms before and during the transatlantic slave trade. Freedom, enslavement, and resistance. Students may learn about the slave trade, how slavery worked to assault the bodies, minds, and spirits of enslaved Africans and their descendants, the abolition of slavery, and more. It includes sources such as maps showing the slave trade out of Africa, Frederick Douglass's speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, which was a brilliant speech. Frederick Douglass was, what an amazing human being. The practice of freedom. This section includes a period known as the Reconstruction part of America, as well as Jim Crow laws, other political, social, and cultural movements based basically on racism. Students might explore the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments to the Constitution, writing from W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, or the Supreme Court's 1896 ruling Plessy versus Ferguson, when the court ruled racial segregation was constitutional. It was a huge mistake. And then they'll talk about the movements and debates. Students will learn about the civil rights movement. Good. Housing discrimination against Black Americans. Also good. Black Power movement. Also good. Especially the way the Black Power movement handled themselves then. Not to be confused with BLM now. Let's see. The feminist movements. Diversity within Black communities. The course materials for the final unit include writings from Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and other political figures, in addition to Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, and others. I don't agree with everything. By the way, the process of moving beyond the pilot materials of the course has taken a year and involved consulting with about 300 professors Also said no state has seen the framework before it was released today. All right. So coming to a high school near you, an advanced placement course on African American studies. In my very quick little look at what I see, I don't see anything I have any problems with. As far as these other things that were the basis of Florida's objection, that they are now optional or extra credit things, that's okay with me. I don't have any problem with it. I don't agree with it, but on the other hand, you got to give a little. You can't necessarily just have it your way or the highway, can you? So we'll see how it works. And the proof will be many years from now after the course is taught for a while. This is the Wells Report, back with hour number 3 in just a minute. Okay, hour number 2. I'm sorry. I'll be back with hour number 2. Gotta go. Very busy. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. We report the news honestly and fairly. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary. That's not the news. That's just my opinion. I'm not the Oracle of Delphi. I'm your neighbor. I just tell you what I think. In return for me telling you what I think, you tell me what you think. It's called debate. We have people of all political stripes joining us here on the Wells Report. It's always good. You can do it two ways. You can call me on the telephone at 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. In case you're wondering where that is, it's right there. It's right there. Right there on the little crawl down there. See, just above the support the Wells Report thing, right? That's where the telephone number is. Anytime you need it, give us a call, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. All right. So something happened today. This as a part of the unbelievable, crazy politics of presidential classified documents. As you know, and has been reported virtually everywhere, including the Wells Report, the political apparatus of the political machine running the United States of America decided that what it wanted to do was it wanted to invalidate Donald Trump's chance to run for president in 2024. To do that, they had to do what they possibly could to try to make him guilty of trying to start an insurrection or pin a very serious crime on him and so on and so forth. So far, it's been completely and totally a waste of time and taxpayer money. But what happened is that as they were kicking over anthills trying to look for anything to nail Donald Trump on, they started kicking over anthills that began to screw up their own people. And as all of this stuff came back that they were counting on to destroy President Trump, and it didn't. The end result is that now we have things that are beginning to spill over on President Biden and Vice President Pence, and probably a lot of other presidents who are now just sitting it out, waiting for all this to blow over, because I guarantee you that every president, with the possible exception of Bill Clinton, because he went through this himself already, every president, including Jimmy Carter, has classified materials at their house right this minute. They can't announce it. They can't say, oh, yeah, we've got some too. No, they can't. And so what they're going to do is they're just going to wait for it to go away, and they'll make a nice little private phone call to the National Archives, and they'll make a deal. And we won't ever hear anything about it. But what we do have to hear about is we have to hear about President Biden's unbelievable mishandling of classified material. Well, what about Donald Trump's mishandling of classified material? Well, that's there, but a guarded storeroom with extra locks provided with guidance from the FBI that was guarded by the Secret Service was a lot different than a box beside a Corvette in a garage. Oh, it was locked, though. Yeah. Anyway, all I can tell you is that now what we've had after an embarrassing dawn raid against a former president, now we have embarrassing searches through the many homes of Joe Biden. How was he able to afford all that beachfront property? Anyway, we've now had the second of these searches. This at the president's Delaware home. This is Rehoboth Beach. This is his summer cottage. The FBI searched the place today. It was part of an ongoing inquiry into the handling of classified documents, says USA Today. No additional records bearing government classifications were recovered. That, by the way, is very careful writing on the part of USA Today. The reason is because there were handwritten notes that were confiscated by the FBI. President Biden's attorney, Bob Bauer, confirmed the action, saying the Rehoboth Beach search was planned with the president's full support and cooperation. lasted 3.5 hours, concluding at noon. Bauer said the authorities did take further review, some materials and handwritten notes that appeared to relate to his time as vice president. Okay? Those, by the way, are not actual documents. Those notes, probably okay. They may deal with classified information, and there's a gray area there. Then you have to decide about intent. Were these notes taken so that they could be peddled elsewhere to some foreign power? So far, we haven't gotten that far with the Biden family. We'll see if that changes as time goes by. Citing the Justice Department's desire for operational security and integrity, you don't often hear the word integrity and Justice Department in the same sentence. Bauer said there was no public notice of the action, which was consensual and did not require a warrant. And I will put this out once and for all. They didn't need a warrant for President Trump either. They just needed to show up. The president is on record as saying, go right ahead, search whatever you want to. And he was referring to the storeroom, and the FBI said, no, that happened in May, by the way, of 2021. He said, no, not 2021, 2022. No, we're not going to do that. Just put a bigger lock on it. Oh, okay. Yeah, they did put a bigger lock on it. Then they came down and broke it down and went through the papers, which they could have done before. What they should have done is just showed up, knocked on the door, said, hey, Mr. President, we've got a search warrant here. Do you mind if we go through your stuff? He'll say, absolutely not. Can my lawyer stay? Certainly. Do I have to turn off my security cameras? Absolutely not. That's all they needed to do. It's not like Donald Trump is going to have some sort of Praetorian guard that is going to exchange shots with the FBI. But that's not what they did, is it? They showed up in body armor and with weapons and blah, 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 blah. But these searches of President Biden's quarters are consensual. They're agreed to. It's full cooperation. No, we don't want to do what that evil Trump did, which was essentially negotiate behind the scenes until somebody said, let's just go raid his place, and that's what they did. The whole thing's awful. Anyway, that being said, the search today is a further step in a thorough and timely DOJ process that will continue to fully support and facilitate, said Bauer. That's the president's lawyer. Oh, my God. Ian Sams, a spokesperson of the White House counsel's office, declined to say whether Biden would speak with investigators if asked, saying only that the president had been fully cooperative. By the way, Ian Sams, I saw him this morning on Fox News. Ian Sams is probably the most adept person at being able to listen to a sentence, nod gravely, and come out with a fusillade of incomprehensibility that defies any kind of logical step-by-step understanding of what he's saying, and then a smile and a nod, and he's done. In other words, he was able to speak eloquently about nothing, trying to answer a question that remained unanswered, and the reporter involved just sort of went, oh. Yeah, it was actually kind of funny. But it was the razzmatazz. He's very good at it, so remember that name, Ian Sams? Yeah, it's going to be really hard to nail him down for an answer. He also declined to address whether the other locations linked to the president have been searched. Yeah, this was really good. This is what I was talking about. They said, okay, so is this all the classified information that we can expect to find? And he goes, well, we're in a situation where we're fully cooperating with the authorities, working to get all of this understood and try to get ourselves in front of anything that we need to regarding the particular materials in question, unlike anybody else that has ever done that. My God, did you see what Donald Trump did? It was absolutely awful. So we aren't going to do any of that kind of stuff. And then, of course, we'll have some pie and enjoy a little bit of maybe some cream over some blackberry strudel. The reporter goes, oh, yeah. Asked whether the White House, so in other words, we don't know whether there are any other locations that are going to be looked at. There are other locations. They're going to be looked at. Do we need to know about it? Probably not. Probably not. The damage is already done. I suppose we'd want to know if we went to, say, for example, the Biden family outhouse, in Scranton, Pennsylvania, that is a place where the president goes to contemplate from time to time, maybe stuffed behind the toilet paper or the corn cob bin. Maybe there might be some stuff in there. And I suppose if they do find classified materials in the corn cob bin, then what will end up happening is we'll probably hear about it. I hope I don't have to read that story. Today from Scranton, Pennsylvania, in the corn cob bin of the Biden family outhouse, asked whether the contents of the handwritten notes that were taken today, whether the White House knew the contents of that. He goes, "That's a good question. I'm not going to be able to speak to the underlying content." Uh, this guy's so good. He referred to other questions. I would have just laughed in his face. Because it's truly amusing. I mean, this is a cat and mouse game between reporters and spokespeople. It's just very funny. He referred to other questions about the nature and number of notes to the Justice Department. Yeah, that's all I have to say about the blackberry strudel and so on and so forth in the corn cob bin. So if you have any other questions, please by all means contact the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice says, no, we can't answer that because it's an active investigation of the special counsel. Oh, I see. So can we ask the special counsel? No, he's involved in a special counsel investigation of the special counsel. So we can't give you access to the special counsel while he's investigating himself. What? The beach home marks the third known location the FBI has searched in connection with the discovery of unsecured classified documents related to Biden. Now, that's kind of misleading because the first house, the actual Wilmington, Delaware house, yeah, that's where the box sitting beside the Corvette, that's where that was sitting. And then there were other things inside the house in a room. I kind of consider that one location, but the powers that be want to parse it out into three. In November, agents searched a former Washington, D.C. office used by President Biden after leaving the vice presidency just days before the midterm elections of 2022. And then they found others, and they didn't say a word while they were discussing the first batch. They already knew about the second batch, and I really began to start getting a little bit angry. Last month, the FBI conducted a day-long search of the Wilmington, Delaware residence, discovering a small number of classified items. They never said what it was. I suspect they're boxes, because if they were just documents, they'd say they found a small number of classified documents. No, they found a small number of classified items, which were in boxes. So I'm going to answer the phone here in just a couple of seconds, and we'll see what that is. I think it's somebody trying to sell me something about my utilities. Hi, are you there? Can you hear me? Hello? And they won't talk to me, so I'll just hang up on them. But it's nice to have the phone working, by the way. Yeah. It's nice to have the phone working so you can use it. 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Hour number 2 of the Wells Report of 3. We are going to be searching in 3 separate locations for the news of the day. This is a search for news in section 2. See how I tied that all in there? It's kind of borderline witty-ish. This is the Wells Report. Stick around. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. And there's some interesting things going on regarding Vice President Kamala Harris. The Democrat Party has a problem. Kamala Harris is the de facto frontrunner for the presidential nomination in 2024 if Joe Biden decides not to run. I am 99.98% sure that President Biden will not run for re-election, which leaves the Democrat Party in kind of a mess. And that mess includes Kamala Harris. Now, I believe that politicians of all stripes are essentially very unfairly judged through the auspices of subjective comparison. Okay? Or subjective comparison about anything. In this particular case, there's this story saying the Vice President Kamala Harris created what many consider another awkward and uncomfortable public moment when speaking about space travel yesterday. This is from Fox News, which, by the way, is biased. Harris took part in a Congressional Space Medal of Honor ceremony to honor former NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Robert Behnken. On behalf of President Biden, Harris commended the men for their experience, particularly in the mission aboard the first astronaut-manned capsule in almost a decade, which he enthusiastically described as follows, quote, actually, I wonder if there's a video of this. Yeah, there's a video of this. Let me do this. Let me try to play the video for you, because I think you're going to be able to see this. It probably will make it a little bit easier for you to understand, or give you another reason to, say, for example, shake your head. So this is the vice president at the Space Medal of Honor ceremony. And you tell me what you think about this. Go. Oh, is this going to play a commercial now? I just played it, right? I just played the thing, and now it's going to give us a commercial, I bet you. Go ahead. Make my day. See, I just started this thing. I just tested it. Yeah, maybe I should watch it on Twitter. Continue watching on Twitter. Let's do this. Let me turn this down. Let me turn this over here. Let's go to Twitter because they are a friend of the Wells Report. So let's see what we got here. Let me go to this, do that, stop it there, bring it back, and let's see if it will work this time. Voila.
Which brings me to May 30th, 2020. Bob and Doug returned to the Kennedy Space Center. They suited up, they waved to their families, and they rode an elevator up nearly 20 stories. They strapped in to their seats and waited as the tanks beneath them filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And then they launched. Yeah, they did.
What did people say about that? I'll tell you. I will tell you that it wasn't really pretty what they said. It was pretty bad. And it sort of kind of highlights exactly the problem that I'm discussing with regards to the 2024 presidential election. Who are the Democrats going to get? I'm pretty sure I understand the mental calculations that the Democrats went through when they came up with this entire Biden-Kamala Harris ticket. But I didn't think, and I still don't think that they really figured out what was going on with Kamala until it was too late. This is the Wells Report. Back in a minute. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number 817-379-2172. The chat room's flying. We were talking about Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris is being excoriated for reasons involving the story on the video I just played for you, and the way she described how Douglas Hurley and Robert Behnken flew up to the International Space Station in a SpaceX capsule. It was a Dragon capsule. And they are winning the Space Medal of Honor, and she's awarding it to them. And the way she awarded it to them has now become the grist of the mill, ridiculing the vice president. And I think that a subjective punishment is okay. I think it's flawed. But this is the news story, okay? And you can believe it or not. She says this, which brings me to May 30th, 2020. Bob and Doug returned to the Kennedy Space Center. They suited up. They waved to their family. They rode an elevator up nearly 20 stories. They strapped into their seats and waited as the tanks beneath filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And then they launched. Yeah, they did. Now, I have read to toddlers and young children, and that's essentially the way I used to do it. The description of the mission issued by Vice President Harris was roasted on Twitter for sounding patronizing and as if she was discussing it with children, because it's kind of the way it sounds. Who is she speaking to? I have to assume it's a group of 3-year-old closed head injury sufferers, said townhall.com columnist Derek Hunter. That's a little heavy-handed there, Derek. Just saying. Townhall.com's account also joked only Kamala Harris can make the description of an astronaut's launch seem patronizing. Kamala Harris on astronauts, quote, they strapped into their seats and waited as the tanks beneath them filled with tens of thousands of gallons of fuel. And then they launched. Yes, they did. It's like a 5-year-old wrote this, said Senator Ted Cruz communication advisor Steve Guest. And how is they launched? A laugh line, said Rumble Up CEO Thomas Peters. Former Michigan State Rep Tim Kelly quipped, too bad she wasn't part of the payload. Oh, stop it, you guys. She faced a similar backlash for a 2021 NASA video for kids. She was mocked for an awkward interaction with school children. You're gonna literally see craters on the moon with your own eyes. With your own eyes. I'm telling you, it's going to be unbelievable. You're not going to literally see craters. I keep saying critters. You aren't going to literally see craters on the moon. You are going to visually see craters on the moon. You could literally read about craters on the moon, but you don't have to because you're going to see them. Anyway, the latest video followed a recent report from the Washington Post that revealed some Democrats have begun questioning her basic political skills. And that is an issue. And it comes down to a very simple question. Is Kamala Harris a good enough public leader to be the president of the United States? Yes or no, and why? 817-379-2172, or you can join us on the chat room. Let's see, the only way that Kamala Harris would stand a chance in the 2024 presidential election is if they retire Joe Biden and move her into the presidency. Then she may get pity votes. But she couldn't even garner 10% when she ran last time. Chris Grimes, who's a Democrat, said, Yvonne, if Joe Biden chose not to run for re-election, Kamala Harris would not fare well running for the Democrat nomination for the presidency. Some people are better suited to be assistant coaches rather than head coaches. I could see her transition to attorney general in a Democrat administration, which would have been a better fit than VP. He's right. Yeah, he's right. And while I am very, very sure that there are plenty of female Democrats of color that would be immensely greater at this job, at being VP, than Kamala Harris. I believe that the people involved in the Democrat Party that made the decision to choose Kamala Harris as running mate for Joe Biden did not realize what are plain limitations in Kamala Harris's capability when it comes to communication and when it comes to just personal credibility. And I saw it. I saw it during the debate when she decided to play this kind of an interesting little, come on, Joe, what are you doing, man? And she looked like she really damaged herself. That's when her credibility, as far as I was concerned, was gone. You know, it was very much like Cory Booker calling himself Spartacus. He's like, seriously? Try not to self-aggrandize. Maybe what you should do is you should let other people say it, Senator Booker. Anyway, how did she make it as far as she did? Well, it's not who she is or what she is, or it's more what she is. It's not so much her credentials, it's her pedigree. She is a woman of color. She has been elected to high public office in California. She essentially just rode that job as opposed to destroying it. And she essentially got moved up the party apparatus based on the fact that she didn't make horrendously, horrifyingly terrible mistakes until she became vice president. It's the Peter principle. You will rise to the level of your incompetence. And all I can say is there are people that say maybe she should have been, say, for example, an attorney general. Considering the typical attorney general now, okay, yeah, she probably couldn't be worse, but what she couldn't be is an adept user of politics, and therefore continuing the tradition, the new tradition of the DOJ as a political action committee. She wouldn't be able to do those things nearly as well as Merrick Garland. It depends on, once again, what do you want the Department of Justice to do? In the Biden administration, the Department of Justice is a bludgeon to punish political adversaries. That's what the Department of Justice is. And Kamala Harris really can't get enough things right, like knowing when not to laugh or when not to speak. Merrick Garland, on the other hand, got that down. He knows exactly what he's doing. And so that's why we're not going to see Kamala Harris as an AG. We're just not. So that's how she got there, got as far as she did get. All right. While we're on the subject of this stuff, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with regards to, say, for example, I don't know, the new sheriff in town. The new sheriff in town, of course, Republicans running the House of Representatives and therefore the House committees. An organizational meeting of the House Judiciary Committee turned into a bitter debate over a proposed amendment to committee rules that would require the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of committee meetings, allowing members to bring in a constituent if they wanted to lead the pledge. The amendment was put forward by Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, was met with a challenge and another amendment by Representative Dave Cicilline. He's a Democrat from Rhode Island, who said anybody who supported an insurrection against the United States should be barred from leading the pledge. Quote, I think if we adopt this amendment, then we will be truthful in representing that stating this pledge is an affirmation of your defense of democracy and the Constitution. It's hard to take that claim seriously. In fact, if indeed an individual who in any way supported an insurrection against the government of the United States is allowed to lead the pledge, asking if Gaetz would support his amendment. Gates countered by saying if Ciceline's definition of insurrection is someone who objected to electors, then there would be many Democrats on the committee that wouldn't be eligible to lead the pledge, noting the last Republican to be sworn in as president without objection to electors was President George H.W. Bush, which is part of this wonderful fairy tale being told by Democrats that is simply not true regarding the challenge of electors by Donald Trump. Cicilline insisted that that was not how he defined insurrection, and he would allow the committee chair to determine what constitutes supporting an insurrection, which is garbage because, indeed, if the chairman then said, okay, this person didn't support an insurrection, there'd be an argument that the chairman was wrong. In other words, that's a hanging curveball of dispute being offered up by Representative Cicilline. Representative Darrell Issa noted the insurrection is a crime and suggested expanding Cicilline's amendment to cover all convicted felons. And then Cicilline declined that. What? I'm not talking about convicted felons. I'm talking about elected officials who swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States who in any way participated, supported, facilitated, encouraged the insurrection against the government of the United States. It's not too hard a standard. No, but it's loaded to the rafters with all kinds of political tripwires. Come on, David. Cicilline, geez. Tom McClintock of California then said, hey, because insurrection is a crime, no one guilty of it can serve in the House anyway. Duh. He accused Cicilline of, rather than leaving such matters to the courts, wanting to be judge, jury, and executioner. Cicilline then admitted that no one on the committee has been found guilty of insurrection, noted the amendment allows for non-members to come in and lead the pledge. Several Republicans were dismayed that the matter was being debated at all. Jeff Van Drew, the Republican from New Jersey, the former Democrat who switched parties in 2019, said, I'm almost speechless, noting that members can take 60, 90 seconds of their time to stand up and affirm their devotion to the country. Come on, this can't be real. I can't believe we're having this debate. How can we waste time arguing about this, he added later on. Why in the heck can we just stand up, say we love our country, we love our flag. If we do this more than once a day, is that okay? I think it's okay. Representative Deborah Ross, the Democrat from North Carolina, noted there's a Supreme Court precedent dealing with public schools that said officials cannot force citizens to say the pledge. Committee Chairman Jim Jordan noted that no one would be forced to say anything under the amendment. Representative Chip Roy, the Republican from Texas, blasted Democrats for their opposition to basic principles, citing not just the pledge, but a recent proposal in the House Rules Committee to condemn socialism. And that's the state of your Democrat Party today, said Roy. Wesley Hunt, the Republican from Texas, who's a graduate of West Point, noted that saying the pledge acknowledges those who gave their lives for their country. Oh, yeah. Quote, the least we can do is pay homage to the sacrifice of those who have come before us and say, you know what, Democrat or Republican, we're in this together. That flag is the one thing that unites us. Let's just take 30 seconds to put all of our differences aside and say that we can agree that this country is wonderful, this country has done outstanding things, and that brave men and women were willing to die for it, and that's what sets us apart from every other country in the entire world. Ranking member Gerald Nadler of New York, who's a Democrat, objected to the amendment, calling it unnecessary because members already say the pledge on the House floor. Representative Mike Johnson, the Republican for Louisiana, countered by saying that many members, including Nadler, are typically not on the floor for the pledge. Cicilline's amendment was voted down. Ultimately, Get's amendment calling for the pledge to be said was approved without opposition with a vote of 39-0. But they did get to waste a couple of hours. So, oops. So yesterday, I was talking about, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or whether you're a Republican, we have a chance to vote a bunch of these people out of office, and we should take it. You know, this debate that was written up in Fox News took me about, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes to read to you. It took a lot longer to actually occur than it took to report about it. In other words, the Judiciary Committee already gummed up by idiots. Now, I don't have any problem having a good debate on a political issue as long as the political issue is worthy of that debate. How many people want to say the Pledge of Allegiance? Good. The ayes have it. Next. But we deserve better in the Congress of the United States. But John David, if you vote out a bunch of people, there are going to be a whole bunch of people that are lost. Yes, I know. But it's more important that these people realize that the people of the United States are finished with this garbage than it is to keep those people in place until they realize they're finished with this garbage. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. As you know, I am allergic to GMO corn, genetically modified corn. I'm allergic to it. About 12 to 15% of Americans are. They don't have the same reaction to it that I do, but many do. I get debilitating migraine headaches from eating GMO corn. And the only kind of corn that you can get in the United States of America is GMO corn. Over the weekend, it was reported on Fox Business on Maria Bartiromo's show, Mornings with Maria, that Mexico is actually considering a ban on GMO corn in their country. Now, you got to keep something in mind. Mexico really does work with its food sources. Soft drinks in Mexico, for example, are sweetened with cane sugar. We sweeten ours in the United States with corn syrup made of GMO corn. So if I want a horrifyingly back-breaking migraine headache, I just have a Coke, unless, of course, it was made in Mexico. Now, there was a report on this. Madison Allworth brought this up, and she came to us from Hinkle Farms. And this was on Fox News earlier this weekend. Let me play this for you so you can hear what she has to say with regards to GMO corn. This was from Mornings with Maria over the weekend. Check this out.
Good morning, Maria. Yes, we're on the farm here, and as you can see, clearly still snow on the ground. So it's not yet planting season for corn. But the thing is, the farmer here, as well as farmers across the country, they are concerned about that proposed ban. They're telling us that if that were to go into effect, if Mexico banned all GMO corn, it could be the single most catastrophic thing to happen to corn farming in America.
I just can't even picture in my mind what this is going to do. And, and it, like I said, it's farmers one end of the United States to the other. It doesn't matter where you sell it or what it's used for. It's going to have an effect.
And that's such an important point to make, because this farm that we stand on here with 900 acres of corn, they don't sell directly to Mexico. That mostly comes from the Midwest. But because corn is our single largest agriculture export, anything that happened and disrupted that export market would have a direct impact on the commodity price of corn. And we're telling you that Mexico, it buys a lot of U.S. corn. Last season alone, they purchased $10.6 billion worth of corn from the United States. Agents on both sides of the aisle have been meeting to discuss this proposed plan, but there really has not been any progress there. That's why the USDA is saying after a recent meeting, quote, Mexico's proposed approach, which is not grounded in science, still threatens to disrupt billions of dollars in bilateral agricultural trade, cause serious economic harm to U.S. farmers and Mexican livestock producers, and stifle important innovations needed to help producers respond to pressing climate and food security challenges. We spoke to a fifth-generation Nebraska corn farmer who mainly grows white corn for human consumption and ships to Mexico. He says he would not switch to growing non-GMO corn because of the environmental and financial impacts. So he is hoping for good news.
Our destinies are tied together. They need us as much as we need them. And so we really need to come to the table and resolve this issue and allow GMO corn to continue going into Mexico.
Maria, 90% of the corn grown in the U.S. is GMO corn. And Mexico really trying hard to prepare themselves for this potential ban. They've actually imposed a 50% tariff on any white corn leaving the country to try to provide enough corn for their tortillas, and again, in preparation for this potential ban. So lots of hope from these farmers that are headed to Washington today. They're meeting with lawmakers from roughly 4 to 5:30 p.m. But farmers on the ground, like the ones here, Liz, they tell me that they are desperately hoping for good news. Maria?
Yeah.
All right, so there you go. That's the story regarding GMO corn. Now, as you also know, I'm not one of those people that takes my allergies out on my neighbors. I just don't do that kind of stuff, because GMO corn has a lot of amazing properties that are very, very good. It's very high yield. It's very high protein. And if it wasn't for the fact that there are a few of us in the United States, it's a pretty good number. 12 to 15% is a lot of people that for whatever reason are allergic to it. It's still a very, very good product. But, maybe Mexico, and once again, you cannot trust medical information. It took me literally, it was a 20-year project trying to figure out just exactly why it was I was getting migraine headache. And we finally figured it all out. It took me that long. If there's a problem with GMO corn and it affects this very large number of people, then maybe Mexico is right. All these people saying, my gosh, we don't even know how to grow corn that's not GMO corn. Yes, you do. Stop it. Go down to the Grange. Go down to the Grange. They'll take care of it for you. We'll send you some seed corn. Everything will be just fine. Everybody relax. But on the other hand, is it a pain in the butt? Absolutely. It's absolutely a pain in the butt to change that crop. But it sure would be nice. Sure would be nice to see. Sure would be nice to be able to drink a Coke made in America. Yes. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. All righty then. Thanks very much for being a part of the show, and we shall return it. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Welcome to the broadcast. We report the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. I make commentary. That is not the news. That's just my opinion. We debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. My opinion, by the way, is just as valuable as yours. Let's compare them, shall we? So, I have long spoken of the idea that corporations in the United States should be constitutionally compliant. If I ever have a chance to serve in Washington, D.C. in the Congress of the United States, I will be writing a bill that would, say, for example, say that if a company, if a corporation does business in the United States of America, it has to be constitutionally compliant. The law would have something to do with the way people handle their employees. The Bill of Rights would exist beyond just as a, say, for example, a display or a pamphlet somewhere in some office. They'd actually have to walk the walk. I could see that every corporation in the United States would have to add a chief constitutional compliance officer whose job it would be to make sure that the Bill of Rights existed for the employees at any particular corporation. Likewise, those people doing business with the government of the United States as their main source of income should also be constitutionally compliant. And one of them is the Smithsonian Institution. In case you don't know, the Smithsonian Institution, or the Smithsonian, let me turn that over there, is a group of museums and educational and research centers, the largest such complex in the world, created by the U.S. government for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. It was founded August 10th, 1846. It operates as a trust instrumentally, is not formally a part of any of the three branches of government. The institution is named after its founding donor, the British scientist James Smithson. It was originally organized as the United States National Museum. The name ceased to exist administratively in 1967. It's called the nation's attic for its eclectic holding of 154 million items. The institution's 19 museums, 21 libraries, 9 research centers, and zoo include historic and architectural landmarks, mostly located in the District of Columbia. Additional facilities are located in Maryland, New York, and Virginia. More than 200 institutions and museums are in the system in 45 states, Puerto Rico, Panama. They are Smithsonian affiliates. Institution publications include Smithsonian and Air and Space Magazine. I love Air and Space. It's a great magazine. Almost all of the institution's 30 million annual visitors are admitted without charge. The exception being Cooper Hewitt, the Smithsonian Design Museum, which charges an admission fee. Its annual budget is about $1.25 billion, with 2/3 coming from the annual federal appropriations. 2/3 of their $1.25 billion budget comes from us. So, why am I giving you all this information? Why am I positing that the Smithsonian Institution should be constitutionally compliant? I'm glad you asked. The Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum kicked out a dozen Catholic high school students and their chaperones for wearing beanies inscribed with the pro-life message, Rosary Pro-Life. It wasn't anti-anything. It was pro-life. On January 20th, students and chaperones from Our Lady of the Rosary School, based out of Greenville, South Carolina, traveled to Washington, D.C. for the annual National March for Life. The group members were all wearing matching blue beanies with the words Rosary, pro-life. The American Center for Law and Justice, the ACLJ, representing the parents and some of the students involved, alleged the museum staff mocked the students, hurled expletives, and claimed the museum was a neutral zone where political or religious messages were not allowed. Okay, well, I'm sorry, but it's at least a political circumstance where the First Amendment of the United States is not protected inside the Smithsonian Institution that derives most of its money from the people of the United States. On Twitter, the mother of one of the students said the group was approached by a security guard who told them to either take off their beanies or leave the premises. Her daughter allegedly told the guard they were wearing the hats to identify and find one another in the crowd before they were escorted out of the museum. Other people in the museum were wearing all sorts of different hats as they traversed the exhibits, according to ACLJ Executive Director Jordan Sekulow. I know Jordan, good man. Quote, this is a clear and egregious abuse of the First Amendment, which protects their right to free speech without government interference, and we are ready to take action. A government institution cannot censor an individual's speech, much less speech from the inherent Christian pro-life position. Sekulow, noting that the Smithsonian Institution is a federal entity that receives upwards of $1 billion from the government each fiscal year, said the decision by the museum was an example of outrageous and abhorrent discrimination. Spokesperson for the museum released a statement about what transpired, said the incident did not adhere to their policies or protocols. Quote, asking visitors to remove hats or clothing is not in keeping with our policies or protocols. We provided immediate training to prevent a reoccurrence of this kind of incident and have determined steps to ensure this doesn't happen again, said Allison Wood, the museum's deputy director of communications. So in other words, the kids were right. The Smithsonian was wrong. And I'm glad that that worked. Yeah, I'm glad that that worked. I'm going to try to come up with my former colleague, still is actually, Jordan Sekulow. I wonder if I have his number. I think I do. Nope, I don't. So, but I have somebody that does have the number. So let me see if I can get a hold of them and try to get a hold of Jordan Sekulow. Let's see. I probably shouldn't read this out to you. Let's see here. Let me see if I got this. Let's see. I almost read his name out to you. I'm not going to do that. Let's see if he'll even answer. I don't know that he will. Probably should have done this during the break. Just get off me. Stop judging me. Let's see. Do you have Jordan Sekulow's? Kulow. See, I must be his friend because I know how to spell his name. Sekulow's contact info. INFO? Question mark. All right. So what I'll do is I'll get in touch with Jordan Sekulow, probably put him on a Zoom call, and maybe, who knows, we might be able to hear from the guy that's actually involved in this thing. I'll find out. Perhaps we'll do that tomorrow here on the Wells Report. Look, it's okay for people in a peaceful way to, shall we say, advocate for their positions that they want to make public. It's okay. It's called free speech. I don't agree with everything. I don't. But I do agree with the notion that people ought to be able to stand for what they believe. And they should be able to promote what they think is the right thing to promote as a part of their lives. The First Amendment guarantees that. I don't know what happened to this nation. I don't know what occurred that made it possible for someone regardless of whether they work at the Smithsonian Institution or not, to put themselves on a high horse and start talking about how their particular sensibilities demand a complete resolution that violates the First Amendment of the Constitution. What we've done is we've created an entire generation or two of people who believe their personal outrage is more important than the founding documents of this nation. And that in itself is beyond intellectually bankrupt. It's just plain sociopathic. Everybody has the same freedoms in the United States. Everybody has them. It's called the Bill of Rights. Not only can you express yourself according to the Bill of Rights, you must also not trample on somebody else's ability to express themselves in the Bill of Rights or with their constitutional rights. Therein lies the basis of what used to be respect between citizens. They say you should never talk about religion or politics at a family gathering, but strangely enough, I've always been able to do it. It's not because we don't have differences of opinion. It's because we're respectful of each other. Because we love each other. Because the objective is to actually perhaps come up with a better idea courtesy of the conversation that you're having. There might be somebody that sees these beanies, Rosary Pro-Life. Well, how does that work? How do you guys do this? Well, we're Catholic and we don't believe in adoption. Well, what's the rosary thing? Well, that's an interesting little piece of gear. Here, let me tell you about it. And so those kinds of things, or saying, hey, look, I disagree with you for whatever reason, and I realize that you're pro-life and so on and so forth, but I honestly believe that a woman should be able to do with her body as she chooses. Well, let's talk about it. And if people are willing to actually have a discussion of these issues, we are closer to solving them. We are closer to solving them than further away. Taking a bunch of high school kids from South Carolina from a Catholic high school, chasing them out of the Smithsonian Institution sets us farther apart, not closer together. And that we have people that would actually honestly believe that they have the right to trample on somebody else's point of view. What happened to polite society? I remember the United States being a polite society. I remember that. What happened to that? Why is it that we keep putting individual sensibility in front of the greatest governing documents in the history of the human endeavor? If you have any of those answers, by all means, share them with me. 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172, hour number 3 of the Wells Report in progress for this Wednesday, the first day of February. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate it. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with our suspension from YouTube, but I can see that there are people watching on YouTube. Thanks very much for doing so. Are you having trouble getting through on the chat room? I don't get it. I'm hoping it was supposed to be a 1-week suspension that was supposed to be over today. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but we will see, and we'll try to figure it all out, okay? And try to get that all handled. But if you are watching on YouTube, thank you. You can join us on the phone, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. So while we're on the subject of rights in the United States, the state of Illinois lost an appeal yesterday after a lower court judge issued a restraining order on a newly enacted ban on some semi-automatic rifles as well as high-capacity magazines. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a gun control law into law on January 10th. It banned the sale and distribution of assault weapons, whatever they are, high-capacity magazines, and switches. Switches? Are you talking about, say, for example, I don't know, safety on, safety off switch? You probably want that on a rifle. Just saying, which went into effect immediately after he approved it. So the law that J.B. Pritzker signed, which was a clear infringement on Second Amendment rights, high-capacity magazines and switches, whatever those are, went into immediate effect. Effingham County Judge Joshua Morrison immediately issued a temporary restraining order against the law January 24th, preventing it from being enforced. Morrison's ruling came in response to a lawsuit from 4 gun merchants and 850 individuals who argued the law was enacted improperly, didn't have the proper public input, adding that it violated state and U.S. constitutional equal protection clauses and provided exemption for some group of people based on their occupation or training. For example, people who are active or retired law enforcement are excluded from the ban. Morrison said in his ruling that plaintiffs are being immediately and irreparably harmed every day in which their fundamental right to bear arms is being denied. After an appeal from Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, Illinois' 5th District Appellate Court ruled in a 2-1 decision that the temporary restraining order can stay in place, and then extended it statewide. Previously, the temporary restraining order was only applying to the plaintiffs. Well, now it's across the state. So in other words, this brand new law, which clearly infringes on the Second Amendment of the Constitution, courtesy of not just the Constitution of the United States, but also the Constitution of Illinois, has been upheld by not just a state judge, but a state circuit court of appeals. That bodes well for the people of the United States. It's a very, very good thing. The ruling said the plaintiffs had a likelihood of success on the merits in regard to their argument that the law violates the state and U.S. Constitution. Illinois also faces several other lawsuits challenging the law, including one from the National Rifle Association. Jason Ouimet, executive director of the NRA Institute for Legislative Action, told Fox News the law is unconstitutional. Quote, "The NRA will not stand by while activist politicians pass unconstitutional laws that do nothing to promote public safety. We sued the state of Illinois because this new law is a blatant violation of Americans' Second Amendment rights." He's right. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. The idea that political points should somehow trump, like I said moments ago, the founding documents of the greatest country in the history of the human endeavor is ridiculous. Absolutely, crazily ridiculous. And that being said, I'm glad that these people are losing. I really am glad. Hopefully they will continue losing and we will be able to see our United States of America thrive and prosper in the decades and centuries ahead. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. It happened earlier today. It was published on Instagram. And we are watching it from Twitter. What is it? Well, here it is. It's so funny. This is just so funny. I actually watched this just moments ago. I don't know why it does what it does. I'm really kind of confused. So for whatever that's worth, hold on. Let me get this right as I try to bring this to you. This is exactly what happened just a second ago, and I don't know why, but we'll work that out. So I think I've got it now. One more time.
Good morning, guys. I'll get to the point right away. I'm retiring for good. I know the process was a pretty big deal last time, so when I woke up this morning, I figured I'd just press record and let you guys know first. So I won't be long-winded. You only get one super emotional retirement essay, and I used mine up last year. So really thank you guys so much, to every single one of you, for supporting me, my family, my friends, my teammates, my competitors. I could go on forever. There's too many. Thank you guys for allowing me to live my absolute dream. I wouldn't change a thing. Love you all.
All right. So that is Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback anybody ever saw, retiring from the National Football League. He's done. And I have to be perfectly honest with you, I have enjoyed watching him play. I was not necessarily a fan of the New England Patriots, but I was a fan of the amazing interaction between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Just as I was absolutely enthralled with the thinking between Joe Montana and Bill Walsh. There have been other coaching combinations that I have watched because I truly enjoy watching the plans and how they ran the business of a winning football team in the NFL. I have just reveled in watching Tom Brady throw a football to an exact spot anywhere on the field, usually within a 1-foot box. Think about that for just a second. Throw a football 40 yards and throw it into a 1-foot by 1-foot box. Not just in 2 dimensions, but 3. The rapport he had with his receivers of his championship teams was amazing. His ability to not put himself in front of the team and do the right thing and essentially give a complete and total rebuke to anybody that uses the term system quarterback. I can tell you that particular term should be teamwork quarterback, because a quarterback is a part of that team. He is not that team. There have been an awful lot of very, very good football teams that had incredible quarterbacks that didn't really do well when it came to the postseason. That wasn't the case. It wasn't the case for Tom Brady. He got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into this year's playoff hunt. They were blown out by the Dallas Cowboys because he simply ran out of tools. And he has decided to walk away. I was surprised. I didn't think he'd want to end his career on that note, but I get it. Gisele Bündchen sent out a very nice note from what I understand. A bit of a rebuff from Tom Brady, who said, "Thank you so much, and I certainly wish you luck in the next chapter of your life." Yow. So, Tom Brady, the best anybody ever saw. Truly the greatest of all time. 7 Super Bowl rings. Done with football. He's going to a Fox Sports booth near you. I'm hoping that he will have as good a time and will be as good as he was an NFL quarterback, as he describes the efforts of other NFL quarterbacks. He's not necessarily leaving without, shall we say, I don't know, a little nudge toward the NFL. This was not long ago. As a matter of fact, this was published day before yesterday. Tom Brady sort of let the cat out of the bag in one of the NFL's worst kept secrets. The longtime quarterback, who has decided not to return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, dropped a pretty big confessional nugget on his Let's Go podcast. He did that yesterday, or day before yesterday, sorry. He admitted that holding happens on every single play in the NFL. Absolutely true. It makes a lot of sense if you start thinking about it. NFL fans have long thought that there's much more holding that's going on than referees are willing to whistle, making it frustrating when they decide to actually throw the flag. Brady wasn't afraid to finally admit that holding is much more prevalent than the yellow flags identify. There's holding on every single play, he said, as his co-host Jim Gray pointed out a seemingly missed holding call on Kansas City Chiefs tackle Orlando Brown during the AFC Championship. Now look, are you allowed to hold? No, you're not. It's against the rules. Is there holding by the offensive line and the defensive line on every play? Yes. When are they going to call it? Well, it's just the way sports are. It's just another thing for us to get emotional about. The refs have a tough job, said Brady. What are they going to get every call right? Is anyone 100% in their job? It's a hard job to do. They're making decisions in a millisecond. Brady has long been the king of getting calls to go his way, but not even TB12 can avoid the dreaded 10-yard holding penalty on one of his offensive linemen. If you've ever watched an NFL game and have thought, wait, that was holding, you might have been onto something. It's true. I have a problem with the NFL, and there are an awful lot of stories that talk about the problems I have with the NFL, and they all come with one basic question. Is the NFL rigged? Yeah. Is the NFL rigged? By the way, Chris says it's only holding if a referee seizes it and chooses to throw the flag. True. There's also at least one instance of defensive holding on every single pass play. That's also true. I have been an umpire, a baseball umpire. There are times when judgment plays a part. I believe in the human interaction of an official arbitrating a baseball or football game. I've said it before on this broadcast many, many times. There are two things that happened on a field of play. What actually happened and what the referee believes happened. If you don't like the call from a referee, be a better player. In the case of baseball, run a little faster. Make a more accurate throw. Hit the ball a little harder. Make a cleaner play, a better throw. Do all of it. Be a better ball player. And that way you don't have to worry about an umpire making a bad call. That's 95% of everything that happens in baseball. The 5% that's missing, well, that's the major leagues. And you can do something incredibly perfect and you'll still get a bang bang call. But the idea that the umpire could be supplanted by some kind of instant replay, especially in the NFL, is ridiculous. The NFL routinely goes to the video and says, we're going to do this replay and we're going to get this call right, and they get the call wrong. They absolutely get the call wrong. It's ridiculous. Is the business rigged? There's a lot going on for that. Chris says, no, the NFL isn't rigged. Well, you know, when you don't make these calls, and then all of a sudden you make one of the calls and it changes the game, and there are a lot of those, one of them I'm going to talk about right this minute, then you got to wonder. The Oakland Raiders, they were in Oakland at the time, playing Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in the snow. Tom Brady goes back to pass, starts to move his arm forward, then tucks the ball. It comes out of his hand. That's a fumble. Oakland recovered it. But then we heard something about an obscure rule that we had never heard before. It was the tuck rule. The tuck rule? What the hell's a tuck rule? Well, apparently, while you're bringing it back and so on and so forth, if it comes out of your hand, it's an incomplete pass. What? So what ended up happening is that they gave the ball to New England. They went ahead and scored. They tied the game, and they won in overtime. That call changed the game. There were several of those that all worked to the detriment of the Los Angeles, Oakland, and now Las Vegas Raiders. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. I actually am sure it's just a coincidence. However, that being said, what we have here is we have an organization that manages the game as well as arbitrates it, calls the calls. They manage it too. And there are circumstances that can't be explained. Like, for example, an NFL team has already got the game in hand. The clock is ticking down. And instead of doing the victory formation, somebody says, hey, let's kick a field goal. And suddenly they kick a field goal. Does it win the game? No, they already won the game, but it does cover the point spread. See, there used to be a time when Major League Sports avoided gambling like the plague, because gambling was the plague. Just exactly what was that all about? Why did they kick the field goal if not to cover the spread? The Bengals failed to punch their ticket to the Super Bowl on Sunday night, falling to the Chiefs 23-20 in the last-second loss as their quest for back-to-back AFC championships fell just short. It was a tightly contested game throughout. Cincinnati fumed over the results, with much of their upset directed toward the referees for a number of moments throughout the game. The biggest gripe came in the game's final minute. The Bengals punted the ball away to Kansas City with the game tied at 20. Chiefs receiver Sky Moore took the punt, returned 29 yards to the right near midfield, but Cincinnati fans contested the officials missed an illegal block in the back that should have negated the huge gain. And you can see it. It's a bang-bang play, not overwhelmingly clear, but there did appear to be a block at the top of the play that sprung Moore for a big gain. A couple of plays later, Joseph Osei's brutal late hit on Patrick Mahomes put the Chiefs in field goal range, and they converted. There were other bizarre officiating quirks in the game that seemed to adversely affect the Bengals. Perhaps the most notable one occurring in the fourth quarter with the game still tied 20-20. Mahomes threw an incomplete pass intended for Jerick McKinnon on second down, bringing up 3rd and 9. However, the clock erroneously continued to run despite The pass falling incomplete, no one seemed to notice. The Chiefs ended up running a third down play, a short completion. The Bengals appeared to have a crucial stop, but the officials ran into the field before the ball was snapped in an attempt to blow the play dead and get the clock sorted out. There were all kinds of problems like that, and a lot of people have said, this game looks rigged to me. That's something they're going to have to fix. They're going to have to fix. So there are problems with the NFL. I want to see them curtail the use of instant replay because they get it wrong anyway. And I'm just tired of it. Although I have to admit, I did watch the NFL this year after being so frustrated with the NFL. I've taken years off. Back with more in a moment. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Family and friends of Tyre Nichols were joined in Memphis, Tennessee by Vice President Kamala Harris for the funeral of Tyre that was expected to draw thousands in the wake of the brutal police beating that took Mr. Nichols' life. His mother, Rovon Wells, thanked local activists for their support and thanked the family's lawyers and police for acting swiftly. Rodney Wells, Nichols' stepfather, said the family will fight for justice, not only for his stepson, but for others who have died in police custody. Tyre was a beautiful person. For this to happen to him was just unimaginable, said Rovon Wells. Harris spoke briefly during the service, acknowledging the Nichols family. She called the death, which came 3 days after he was beaten by Memphis police officers, was called a violent act, was not in the interests of keeping the public safe. Harris said, was he not also entitled the right to be safe? They were speaking at the Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church in Memphis. The service was delayed because of weather and travel interruptions. It began with a 70-person choir singing Strength Like No Other and remarks from the church's senior pastor, the Reverend J. Lawrence Turner, who called Nichols a good person, a beautiful soul, a son, a father, a brother, a friend, a human being. We have come with heavy hearts that can only be healed by the grace of God, full transparency, accountability, and comprehensive legislative reform. Mourners were asked to read Nichols' obituary during a photo slideshow that included images of Nichols, who was beaten for 3 minutes after a traffic stop and a foot chase. After the beating, Nichols was hospitalized in critical condition, died 3 days later. He suffered extensive bleeding caused by a severe beating, according to an autopsy commissioned by the family. VP Harris called on the Congress to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act as Nicholas's mother wept and applauded. That bill failed to pass the Senate in 2021. You have been extraordinary in your terms of your strength, your courage, and your grace. We mourn with you, and the people of our country mourn with you, Vice President Harris said to the Nichols family. Kayana Dixon said she was completely heartbroken by her brother's death. On the night of January 7th, my brother was robbed of his life, his passions, his talents, but not his light. She said, I see the world showing him love and fighting for this justice, but I want my baby brother back. The swift firing and charges against police officers should be the blueprint, no matter the race of the officers involved in alleged police brutality, said Brian Crump. Yeah, I don't know that that's his name. He's the defense attorney that also defended George Floyd. Let me double check. It might be. I might have gotten it right. Hang on just a moment. I am trying to work this through. I'm sorry, I didn't see his name when I read this earlier today. I believe it's Brian Crump. He is the defense attorney. I'll find it for you. We have not seen the last of this. And we shouldn't. We should not. Nichols' death has spoke mostly peaceful protests, and this time they are mostly peaceful. Around the country, renewed discussions about federal legislation to overhaul policing, debates over whether there is a possibility for systemic change. The Memphis Police Department also fired 3 other employees for failing to provide Nichols with adequate medical aid after arriving on the scene. Authorities announced 2 other officers have been relieved of their duties. The duty of officers to provide medical care was a key factor in the murder trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who was convicted and sentenced to 22 and a half years in prison for the death of George Floyd. Federal investigators have opened up a civil rights investigation. The Memphis Police Department permanently disbanded the Specialized Street Unit, which was known by the acronym Scorpion. Really? Nichols' parents are set to attend President Joe Biden's State of the Union address next week after being invited by the Congressional Black Caucus, who are looking to meet with the president to push for changes in policing. One of my colleagues, a guy named Grant Stinchfield, was talking about, well, if he had just done what he was told to do, he'd still be alive. I actually tweeted to Grant, I said, "Are you kidding?" He was given 71 commands in 3 minutes. Most of them screamed at the top of their lungs. I've had trouble with this story because I can't wrap my mind around it. You don't get to kill somebody for a traffic stop unless he's trying to kill you first. Comes right down to that. This has been the Wells Report. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. Yeah. God bless all y'all. Thanks for watching the broadcast. And like I said just a moment ago, I will see you tomorrow for another edition.